I used to believe that love could survive anything, that no matter how tough things got, trust would always hold a marriage together. But trust doesn't break all at once. It cracks, slowly, silently, until one day, you wake up and realize there's nothing left. It started with little things. Stephanie had always been close to me. We shared everything, inside jokes, late-night conversations, even the same ridiculous love for cheesy action movies. But lately, she was different. Her phone was always face down. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd stop mid-message. If I asked what she was laughing at, she'd shrug. It's nothing. But it wasn't nothing. I told myself not to overthink it. People get busy. People change. Then came the late nights. Work ran late. Meetings. Deadlines. Last-minute projects. She'd text me around 7 saying she wouldn't be home for dinner, then show up hours later, smelling like a perfume I didn't recognize. And the worst part? She barely even noticed how much it was hurting me. At night, I would lie awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was losing my mind, if I was paranoid, if I was somehow the problem. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just wasn't ready to face it. Denial is a powerful thing. Even when the signs were staring me in the face, I kept making excuses. I told myself Stephanie was just stressed, that maybe I was imagining things. But doubt doesn't go away. It lingers, festers, and eventually it demands the truth. One night, she told me she was going out with friends. Just dinner, she said, slipping on heels she hadn't worn in years. Nothing crazy. I nodded, smiled, pretended I wasn't watching her too closely. At midnight, she still wasn't home. At 1 a.m., I was lying in bed, staring at my phone, waiting for a text that never came. At 2:30 a.m., I heard the front door unlock. I stayed perfectly still as she walked in, humming softly, the faint scent of cologne clinging to her clothes. Not mine. Something inside me twisted, but I didn't say a word. I waited until she was asleep. Then, carefully, I slid out of bed, grabbed her purse, and checked inside. Her phone was locked, of course. But her credit card receipts? Those weren't. A restaurant we had never been to, a bar across town, a hotel charge that made my stomach churn. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was proof. And once you have proof, there's no going back. Confronting her that night would have been easy. I could have shaken her awake, thrown the receipts on the bed, demanded answers. But I didn't want excuses. I didn't want her to twist the truth, to cry and tell me it wasn't what it looked like. I wanted to catch her in the act. So I waited. The next morning, over coffee, I played my part. The trusting husband. "You've been working so hard lately," I said, stirring my drink. "We should go out. Just us. A real date night." Stephanie hesitated, just for a second. A crack in the mask. Then she smiled. "That sounds amazing." I pulled out my phone. "There's this nice place I heard about." I said the name casually. The same restaurant from her receipts. Silence. Then, too quickly, "Oh, that's fancy. Are you sure?" She was trapped. She couldn't say no without looking suspicious. But she also couldn't say yes without risking everything. She forced a smile. "Okay, let's do it." I nodded, acting like I hadn't just sealed her fate. That night she got dressed up. The little black dress, the red lipstick, the perfume she only wore when she wanted to impress someone. She thought she was playing me, but tomorrow night, I'd be the one playing her. The next evening, we arrived at the restaurant right on time. Stephanie looked perfect, too perfect, like she had something to prove. She sipped her wine, smiled at me, made small talk, but I could see it. The tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes flicked toward the entrance every few minutes. She wasn't here for me. She was waiting for him. And then, right on cue, he walked in. I watched the moment realization hit her. Her whole body stiffened. Her grip tightened around her wine glass. Her eyes went wide as she looked at him, then back at me, panic creeping across her face. I stayed calm. Too calm. She knew. She just didn't know how much I knew. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. Gently, I set it down on the table between us. The gold gleamed under the restaurant lights, small but louder than any words. Stephanie's breath hitched. Her lover, our uninvited dinner guest, stopped in his tracks, eyes darting between the two of us. I leaned back, voice quiet, controlled. "Go ahead," I said, nodding toward him. "Tell him you're busy." For the first time in our marriage, Stephanie was speechless. Stephanie's face drained of color. Her fingers trembled around her wine glass as she glanced between me and him, like she was scrambling for a way out, like she thought she could still lie her way through this. But she couldn't. Her lover, the guy she had been sneaking around with, finally seemed to catch on. His confused expression shifted into something sharper as his gaze dropped to the wedding ring on the table. I saw it happen, the exact second he realized. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, his voice tense. Stephanie's lips parted, but no words came out. I turned to him, giving him the same courtesy she never gave me. "She told you she was single, didn't she?" I asked, my voice even. His jaw clenched. "She said she was divorced." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Well, that's news to me." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Then he looked at her, really looked at her. Stephanie reached for his hand. "I can explain." He pulled away. That told me everything I needed to know. I stood up, adjusting my jacket, my movements slow and deliberate. "Enjoy your dinner," I said, sliding the ring across the table toward her. And then I walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Stephanie had already lost me. I barely made it to my car before my phone started buzzing. "Stephanie." I let it ring. Then came the texts. "Please talk to me. It's not what you think. Come home, we can fix this." Fix what? The months of lies? The secret dates? The fact that she threw away our marriage for a guy who didn't even know she was married? No. I put my phone on silent and drove. By the time I reached my friend's place, she had sent 5 more messages. Then, the tone changed. "I made a mistake, but you weren't perfect either. After everything I've done for you, you're really walking away? I hope you regret this." Ah, there she was. The real Stephanie. I blocked her number. By noon the next day, I had already spoken to a lawyer. By evening, I had a new plan for my life. One that didn't include her. The divorce was fast. Colder than I expected. At first, Stephanie fought it. She cried, apologized, told me she had messed up, but that we could fix it. I said nothing. Just handed my lawyer the evidence, the receipts, the photos, the texts. When she realized I wasn't playing her game, she changed tactics. Anger, guilt trips, blame. "You're really throwing everything away? We had problems, but I didn't see you trying to fix them. You'll never find someone who loves you like I do." Love? She didn't even respect me. I signed the papers and walked away with everything that mattered. My dignity, my freedom, my future. And Stephanie? She walked away with nothing. The papers were signed. That was it. No more late-night arguments. No more excuses. No more waking up next to someone who had already chosen someone else. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt empty. For 6 years, Stephanie had been my home. Now, I was standing in our empty house, staring at the half-packed boxes, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do next. I had a choice. I could let the past swallow me, let it make me bitter, angry, resentful, or I could leave it behind. So I grabbed the last of my things, threw them in the car, and never looked back. Stephanie tried reaching out a few more times. Different numbers, different emails. She wanted to talk, to explain, to rewrite the ending. But some endings aren't meant to be rewritten. I never responded. Eventually, she stopped trying. And that was when I knew I was free. A few months later, I found my wedding ring. It was in a box of old things, tucked between forgotten memories. I picked it up, rolled it between my fingers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing.
No anger. No regret.
Just peace. I didn't hesitate. I drove to a donation center and left it there. Someone else might put it to better use. As for me, I had a whole life ahead of me, One without Stephanie. And that was the best decision I had ever made.